We'll tell them in a minute.
We'll call to order the Monday, May 25th, 2019 Anderson Township Zoning Commission meeting. So first on the agenda is approval of the agenda. May I have a motion?
I believe the number 5 has been continued till a future date. So modify the agenda 1 through 4 and exclude number 5. I make a motion to approve.
Okay. Second, please.
Second.
Could you call roll, please?
Yes.
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 So if anyone was out here for number 5, which is case,
553, it's case 7-2019 for property located at 5531 and 5431 Clough. That's been continued. So if you don't want to hang around for the next 5 or 6 hours, you can be excused. Nah, hopefully it will not be that long tonight. Yes, so the meeting, Paul just informed me, is on June 25th. That would hear
24th.
that case?
June 24th.
June 24th, sorry. So with that, approval of the minutes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
A second, please.
I wasn't here.
I wasn't here. I don't know that you can do the minutes.
Yes.
Just 2.
So we'll continue that to the next meeting?
I think we can act on them as long as you review the minutes because the cases were continued anyway. So
Okay.
you all reviewed the minutes, correct?
I did.
Okay.
I'll second that then. Roll, please.
Mr. Gothard,
Yes.
Mr. Lewis,
Yes.
Ms. DeBaggio,
Abstain.
Mr. Elick.
I'm going to abstain also.
Okay, so we'll need to vote on those at the next meeting.
Item number 3, a continuation of quasi-judicial hearing for planned unit development, request 4-2019. With that, there are an outline of hearing things that we need to talk about, and I'll discuss. First, I'll outline the procedures the commission will follow in hearing and deciding this matter. Under the zoning resolution, our decision is subject to appeal to the Board of Township Trustees and then to the Court of Common Pleas. As a result, we must employ different procedures from other cases that are typically presented to the Zoning Commission. Because this is a quasi-judicial proceedings, the commission will only receive evidence as to whether the application meets or does not meet the standards and criteria in the zoning resolution. We do not want to hear opinions, just the facts. As a result, all persons presenting testimony before the commission, whether for or against the applicant's position, may only do so after being sworn in and being subject to cross-examination. The staff will present a summary of the application. The applicant will then present its case. The board members may ask questions of the staff and anyone who speaks on behalf of the applicant. If an attorney presents the case for the applicant, the attorney is not sworn in and is not considered to be a witness. As a result, the attorney's statements are not considered as evidence. Evidence only comes in through the witnesses who testify before the commission after being sworn in. The burden is on the applicant to present evidence that the application satisfies the standards and criteria for approval. After the applicant presents its case through its witnesses, all persons in the audience supporting the application will be permitted to testify one at a time after being recognized by the chair. When all persons supporting the application are finished, those opposed to the application will then be permitted to testify after being recognized by the chair. If anyone in opposition is represented by an attorney, that party will go first, followed by any members of the audience. As stated previously, all persons wishing to testify, whether for or against the application, may only do so after being sworn in. When testifying, each person from the audience must come forward to the podium after being recognized, speak into the microphone, and state their name, address, and any affiliation to the case. All persons testifying will be limited to 4 minutes unless a commission member requests that they be given additional time. All testimony is directed to the commission only. No comments or questions are to be directed to the applicant or anyone else in the audience. The commission will only hear new, non-repetitive evidence or questions. Should someone wish to show support of previous testimony, they may do so by following the testimony procedures and stating their support to previous testimony. Now, will all persons who may give testimony this evening, please stand and raise your right hand and swear or affirm. So if you plan on speaking on either of the two cases tonight, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay. With that, these are continuations of other cases, so we would like to limit any speaking to about 3 minutes, but we will make sure everything moves along fairly well. All the commission members have been either at the previous hearings or have seen the previous hearings through the video recordings. So any presenting of evidence at that case is really part of our understanding of the case as it's presented tonight. So with that, Mr. Drury, if you could present the township review.
Thank you. The applicant is Patrick Gunning, Gunning Family Properties, Preferred Land Development LLC on behalf of Gunning Family Properties, property owner. This is case 4, 2019. The location is at 7488 Clough Pike. The zoning there's 2 different zoning districts, A2 residents and B residents. The request is a PUD, a residential PUD. These are the specifics. From the last meeting, 2 lots have been removed, so the request is now for 17 single-family lots, 3.989 acres developed, 2.07 undeveloped, or 34% open space. The minimum lot size is 6,000 square feet, a front yard setback of 25 feet, sides are 5, and rear 25 on the majority of the lots. There are some lots that are proposed with a rear yard setback of 35 feet, and we'll go over those on the plan that was submitted. And we won't go through the full depth presentation since we've done that on 2 other occasions. Let me just go, just to refresh the zoning commission's memory and the audience. This is the site in question. This is Clough Pike. It's to the north of Clough Pike. Wolf Angle is just to the east of the site in question. There is a shared lake on the property. This is the aerial view of the site in question, and the zoning line is approximately in this direction here. This is an aerial of the site in question. Topography, it has a slope to the south down to Clough Pike. This is the flatter portion of the site, and then it slopes down to Clough Pike. This is the zoning line. This is the revised and updated site plan. Again, 2 lots have been removed, those closest to Clough Pike. So the setbacks to the first 2 lots now are in compliance or with the standard setbacks of that underlying zoning district. There has been an increase of the rear yard setbacks of these lots through here to 35 feet, which is standard in the underlying zoning district. This is, you can see it better up on your screen, but the applicant did submit these plans to identify areas that would be cleared and graded and areas that would not be cleared, that would remain undisturbed. And I'll let the applicant speak to those. This is an aerial shot of that. The area outlined in red would be the area that would be disturbed and the outside would not. This was a shot during the wintertime. Proposed landscaping. the elevations of the homes. These are the site photos. This is looking east on Clough Pike toward Wolf Angle. This is looking west on Clough Pike toward 5 Mile. This is the existing driveway on the site that served the home that was formerly there, looking generally in the north, again looking back toward Wolf Angle toward the east. Same general vicinity, but up higher on the site. This is the nearest neighbor on Wolf Angle to the east. This is up at the top of the site. Looking back toward Clough again to the south. This is looking at the lake with one of the homes that shares the lake. So let's go back to the updated site plan. So at the last meeting, there were several issues that the zoning commission wanted clarified. One was the buffering, what was intended to buffer these homes, or these lots in particular, as they are closest to the surrounding existing homes in the Bloomfield Hills subdivision. There was a request for additional information about the maintenance agreement for the lake. There was a request for additional information on the clearing limits, what trees would be saved, what trees would not be saved, and the amount of disturbance on the property. And those were the primary concerns. There was some additional, just about landscaping in general, layout of the site. And with that, if you had any extra questions for me, I think I will turn it over to the applicant to go into more detail about their updated plans.
Any questions of staff?
Paul, I have one. I read in your notes that you were requesting a right-of-way. I see that there is a 40 to 50-foot right-of-way in these new drawings. Is that sufficient?
That is correct. It's compliant with the county thoroughfare plan. It was, they are showing the additional right-of-way on their plans, 50-foot center line. The existing is 40, and the county is requiring 50, so additional 10 feet.
Okay, and could some of that, at some time in the future, ever be used for a sidewalk should something happen on Clough Pike to make that worthwhile?
So they are proposing a sidewalk on both sides of their new street, and then a sidewalk to the east on Clough Pike toward Wolf Angle, and that's consistent with our Anderson Trails plan.
So there's no requirement on the west side?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Paul, I just had a clarification. So the open space calculation includes the lake, even though it's not, there's
Correct.
nothing that calls that out?
Correct.
'Cause if-
Mm-hmm.
And if I have a question for legal, is that considered staff as well?
Sure.
So Austin, I have a question about the lake maintenance agreement. The zoning commission, when I look through zoning, I see nothing that calls something like that out. Been here for a few years, we've never had something like this. Can you speak to it? How we should concern ourselves, if at all?
Yeah, excuse me. My suggestion to the commission is I think that under the general standards in terms of impact on neighbors, I think it's something you can think about as a concern or even express as a concern. I would suggest that you not make your decision based on whether or not that exists. To me, that's more akin to a restrictive covenant or something like that, where it's really between private parties. The parties to a shared lake would have some sort of common law rights and obligations to one another already, even absent an agreement. And I think as a practical matter, as someone who lives on a private street, I think it's in everybody's best interest to figure that out. I don't think zoning commission can make its decision based on the existence or lack thereof.
Okay, thank you. I had another question.
Any other questions of staff? With that, if the applicant would like to come up, state your name, address, and affiliation to the case, please.
Thank you, Mr. Gothard. Members of the commission, Richard Palo, Aronoff, Rosen, and Hunt. My address is 425 Walnut Street, Cincinnati, Ohio, Suite 2200, US Bank Tower, representing the developer. Before I get started, I want to just introduce those that are here, that you can direct any questions that you might have for testimony purposes. Bob Rothard, who was here last time with Abercrombie and Associates, the project engineer, Pat Gunning developer, Mr. Adams developer, and Ashford Holmes, the builders. Given that this is the third meeting, and given Mr. Drury's very comprehensive staff reports, both the current ones and the previous ones, my presentation will be very short. One of the things I do want to start with, and it's on tab 1 of my presentation package, which was not included in Mr. Drury's, is simply the application letter, and to point out the changes from the initial application to now. Again, Mr. Drury did touch on this, and I will briefly touch on it. The original proposal on open space was 28%. That's at now 34%. And as we will get into just a little bit more, there has been additional buffering with a removal of 2 lots, which had a corresponding effect on the increase in density, as well as the corresponding decrease in density with increase in open space. On the behind that sheet is simply just a rendering of what the entrance monumentation would look like. It's going to be a high-class development, a benefit to Anderson Township. And then I do want to go to tab 2, and this was at the end of the hearing at the last time, and this was through Ms. McBride, the 3 main issues that I think needed to be addressed at this hearing. Reconsideration of the density, the joint maintenance agreement with Mr. Musser has already commented upon, and the existing trees, those that will be saved during the development process. And as Mr. Drury indicated, there is a map to that that he pointed out. We didn't mark trees because we don't know what the landscaping plan will look like yet. But I will be able to show you a little bit the no-build areas, both in the perimeter of the development as well as in the open space. Over to a couple of items I want to point out in Mr. Drury's staff report. That's at tab 3, I'm sorry, at page 3. Again, just pointing out the additional buffering, the increase in the open space, as well as the decrease in the the increase in the open space and the decrease in the density. One of the things that when we went back and I first met with Mr. Gunning on this project, and many calls with Mr. Rother, is how do we comply with zoning? Even though it's a PUD, and reading your PUD regulations, very well drafted, how can you make a PUD beneficial both to the developer as well as primarily the lessen the impact to the neighbors? And given that, we wanted to comply with zoning. The prior plan, in several respects, was not compliant with zoning, including density. So this plan, PUD plan, as Mr. Drury's report indicated, is compliant fully with the underlying density at both A2 and D, or A2 and B, I'm sorry. So be it straight zoning, which we don't really want. I don't think the township would want straight zoning, and I know the neighbors wouldn't want straight zoning. The PUD is the best plan for this. And thus the reason why Mr. Drury had first indicated at the first meeting with Mr. Gunning, we would like to see a PUD. That's why we're here for the proposal on the PUD. One of the things I also want to point out, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. If you go to page 6 on Mr. Drury's report, and Mr. Drury, can you pull up the, maybe it might be better for the members of the commission, the CAGIS map that shows the outline? There it is, thank you. And one of the things I wanted to point out is, as you can see in front of you, the topography map, which is really off of CAGIS, I think, that you can see the general outlines of the lot itself. And you can see the lot line basically is half of the lake. And so back to the comment before, do you want a maintenance agreement? Do you need a maintenance agreement? Is it a basis upon which you can rely on approving or disapproval of zoning. We have tried to negotiate with the residents on a maintenance agreement. I don't want to go into the details with that. I've not heard back from them or their counsel as to whether or not they agreed on the final draft. Leave it to say I'm assuming that there is no agreement on the maintenance agreement. That being said, when I first looked at this, I think Mr. Gunning may have testified to this at the last hearing. You know, this is going to be fishing only for the residents. There will be no impact whatsoever on the lake. Fishing only, no active, meaning boating. There will be nothing other than fishing. And one of the things that I want to point out to the members is that there will be a fee paid for by the property owners, basically a fishing license. Even though there's going to be 17 homes here, I don't know how many will fish, but if there's 10 people fishing on that lake at $150 a year, that will go solely towards restocking the lake. So even though your legal counsel has indicated there's no legal reason why you should base zoning upon a maintenance agreement, I can tell you there will be virtually no impact on this. And if there is no maintenance agreement, which I think that is probably the issue here, we would just propose that each party maintain their own portion of the lake. Mr. Gunning and his development folks, along with the HOA, once it's turned over to them, will maintain all of their area. And any licensing fee will be put into their HOA documents. So even though that was an issue, if there is no maintenance agreement, I don't really think there has to be one, since there will be virtually no impact on the lake. And given the outline or the delineation of the lot, there's no reason to have one, because you can clearly see what will have to be maintained by Mr. Gunning and his group. The next tab I want to go to is tab 4. And Mr. Drury, that is simply the new site plan. In the new site plan, as you can see, there's been additional buffering, what we're going to call a no build area or a green space area along lots 11 through 13 and into 10. And there will be a 35-foot setback, but there will be a 25-foot green space. It'll be a deed restriction within that 35-foot setback. And that's going to be a no build, no demolish. Any trees that are left in there, hopefully they won't be impacted, but you never know when you start pushing dirt, whether or not you're going to cut into the root system or any other effect that might have on the native brush. So that addresses the landscaping on that issue for the no build. And if you look down to lots 1 through 3, that's also where Mr. Drury had indicated that's also an increase in what I'm calling the no build area. Tab 6 I'm not going to get into. I'm sorry, tab 5. If you want to go to tab 6, please. And Mr. Drury, if you can pull up on the screen kind of the overhead view. It's probably from Google Maps. Yes, thank you. And you can see the aerial map outlined pretty clearly. There are actually two photos back to back that I have in my packet because we wanted to give both a summer view when the deciduous trees are in full bloom, as well as a winter view. I don't know if you have that, Mr. Drury, but that is the winter view where you can see the leaves have fallen. And that is a more pronounced outline of the no build area. To the bottom of the screen, to the left, my left, is outlined in red. None of those trees will be touched. And if you want to go to the prior screen, Mr. Drury, thank you. To see the amount of the trees that are within that area. And then there's a further, as you go north, assuming the top of the map is north, as you go north, that's simply the 35-foot no build area, the green space area. And as you go west, you can see the further, the no build area. And then, of course, the lake area, and then going to the south to the bottom of the page. So you can see there's actually significant buffering and screening that will remain in place, given the PUD plan. Now, the flip side to that, if this were to go into straight zoning, all of you know that, this is primarily for the residents, that if you go to straight zoning, of course, you increase the home sizes, or the lot sizes with increase in home sizes, but you lose open space. So the proposal here is for the 17 lots, significant open space at 34%, maintaining significant amount of trees. Whereas if this were straight zoning, because of the increased lot size, most of those trees would have to come down. If you go to the last page in that packet, and Mr. Drury, I don't think you have a slide on this, but this is on your website. The last page that I've included is simply a mounding. And I think that came up at the last, here, that is it, thank you very much, the elevation drawing. That is the mounding at lots 10 and 11. It'll be 5 to 6 feet high. If you kind of flip back in your packet between the site plan or in your drawings, you can see that that also is going to offer significant buffering. We don't know the amount of the trees until it's actually laid out at final development plan approval. It could be 6 trees, it could be 8 trees. We don't know the caliper yet, but we're assuming 6 to 8 feet high with evergreen trees, which you know grow pretty quickly, and they will be mature when they're installed. And the HOA would maintain those also. If you go to page 8, and this is a key consideration of what we're, or tab 8, I apologize. A key consideration as to what the developer wants to do in this development to the benefit, what we think, the residents. This is an empty nester product. This is something cited in the site plan that not only does Anderson Township have a shortage of the empty nester, those that want to live in Anderson Township. I think that's probably endemic to most of the communities in the greater Cincinnati area. You know, where do you go when you don't want to go from, you know, a 4-bedroom house, maintaining the lot, maintaining the landscaping and everything that goes with that home, to something where you're going to get primarily a 1-story living facility with 2 additional bedrooms above. You can see those dormers, those are 2 bedrooms, that's on the 2nd floor. It's basically a 1.5-story home, as opposed to if you were to go to the straight zoning, you would be getting into a 2-story home. These have walkout basements, so be it 2.5 stories or 2 stories, it's primarily by way of elevation about 1.5 stories. Ashford Homes has built this product in the past, and this is what the developer would like to see on all of the 17 lots. One of the things that, you know, the PUD does is for the benefit of all, as I had indicated. It lowers the impact to the neighbors, smaller size homes, smaller lots, of course, but you trade off for greater density, or I'm sorry, for lesser density and greater open space. One of the things that also was mentioned previously, even though this is under the jurisdiction of Hamilton County Water and Sewer, is drainage. That's always an issue when you have a new development. And I would like to have Mr. Rother just come up and briefly speak to the drainage issues and how the intent is, the way that this is laid out, is to have 0 impact on that lake.
Bob Rother with Abercrombie Associates, 3377 Compton Road, 45251. As I previously testified at some of the other meetings, all of the hard surface areas will be directed down to the detention that is going to be down along Clough Pike. So the impact on the lake from hard surface areas will be 0. All the hard surface will be coming to Clough Pike. There will be some grassy backyards that'll drain into the lake, but that's actually what's going in there right now. So it will not be any increase in runoff into the lake from this development.
Bob, do you want to briefly touch on landscaping, you know, when the landscaping plan will be completed and how that will be presented?
Yeah, that would be part of our construction plans, once we go through, regional planning for subdivision approval, after zoning approval. That would be part of our construction plan package.
Members of the commission, we have nothing further. We encourage any comments, any questions you may have. The last thing we want to do is have you unsure of anything that has yet to be answered before you make your decision. And if there are none, we, of course, want your approval here. We think it's a positive development for the community. We've addressed all of your issues, including what we feel are those that impact the community, to do the best we can to comply with underlying zoning as well as PUD.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Eliff, any questions of the applicant?
Yes, I do have a couple questions for Mr. Palo. It's very positive that you increased the buffering setback between 11 and 12, and I guess maybe 10 even, but 11 and 12. But those no-build areas or no cut or whatever are going to be on private lots. And my experience when you have that is it basically becomes unenforceable. Somebody will buy that lot, they won't like the tree, they won't like something, so they'll go cut it down. And then maybe one of the affected neighbors, after the fact, calls the zoning office and says, hey, there's a plan, they didn't follow it. But the reality is there's nothing you can do about it. How is that really helping anybody?
Yeah, Mr. Eliff, you make a good point. We've all seen that. We've been doing this for a long time. What I have done, recommended clients do, is to build the protections as best they can, not only within the declaration, the homeowners association declaration, but also on the board itself. I mean, there will be not only a deed restriction, but also subdivision plat, the HOA documents that delineates the green space area. And so in the documents that we're going to build into is the authority and power of the board itself to enforce those regulations. Basically, if you want to build anything, as you know, Mr. Eliff, you have to, if you want to put a shed, you have to get the HOA's requirements to put a shed on your lot, not even within the green space area. But we're hopeful, given the regulations that we're going to have and the power that we're going to have with the board of the HOA, that every neighbor knows, including any contract with Ashford, if they want to build, it will be set forth, you cannot build in this area. And if somebody wants to come in the middle of the night, literally, and cut down a tree, I suppose that they can. What I would recommend that the builder also do is to stake that, what we've done in the past, is to stake that property. Not only the lot limit, but it would be very easy to stake that property, just to have a couple of pins with flags on it. In each of the width of the lot, this is the no-build area. And when you landscape or install the rear lawn up to that no-build area, remember also that this will be the natural vegetation. So it will be naturally delineated between the lot and the green space area.
Okay, thank you. And sorry to interrupt, but you did answer my question. And when I was watching last month's presentation, there was a lot of concern I saw from some of the zoning commission members about, well, there'll be this natural buffer, it'll be delineated, but when you get in there and do the construction and stuff, there's probably going to be damage to those trees. So you might get in there and the houses be built and stuff, there's natural buffering there, but then it's going to be weakened and probably die. And I saw this drawing, which is helpful, but I guess based on what I was watching on YouTube from last month, I was expecting a complete landscaping plan, a complete plan showing this is the trees that are going to be preserved, this is how we're gonna fence it off and stuff like that. And I heard Mr. Rothert say we're gonna do that in the construction drawings, which is a little unusual because in the county subdivision regulations, I don't know this for a fact, I don't think that the county subdivision regulations have a landscaping requirement. It's all zoning and local stuff. So I heard the board say they wanted to see all that stuff. And I guess I hear what you're saying, it's a little bit unknown, but I guess I'm wondering, why couldn't we see that stuff? I mean, you make a landscaping plan and show some plantings on it.
Mr. Eliff, I'm going to let Mr. Rothert speak, and again, I don't want to give testimony. And when we had discussed that, the issue was until we know the limits of the development, we can't come in and say, Mr. Drury, can you go back to the overhead? Thank you. We can't say this is the exact limits of what it will be taken and what won't be taken. We can outline that, and we can say nothing here will be touched. But as you had indicated, and I had mentioned earlier in my presentation, you just don't know until you start construction. You know, is it going to be 10 feet outside of that open space, and then if you start affecting the roots and something will die? You know, I would pose that, you know, the landscaping across that area, the buffering zone would be consistent with what we've presented before in this sheet with the, not only, again, are you going to have the natural buffering, but anything that needs to be filled in because of that, you know, we would fill in with that if anything were to die. And again, that's part of the reason we didn't provide a landscaping plan. You know, let's look at, just for example, the 25-foot green space area. The intent is not to do anything there, leave it in its natural habitat, so to speak. So not touch it, not do anything. And so to put it, we had not intended, I don't want to speak for Mr. Gunning, I don't know that I'm going to say, I don't know that there was any intent to add anything additional that is not already there and screened. Now, if you're going to be taking something down, of course, that should be screened. And either, Bob, can you speak to that as far as the additional landscaping or landscaping plan?
I think the thought was we went from a 10-foot undisturbed buffer to a 25-foot undisturbed buffer, thereby preserving everything within that 25 feet, as opposed to needing to supplement that, we're preserving everything that's along that property line.
What are the plants along there? Is it, because we don't have the survey, there's some decent trees there, I guess. I was
There
up
are.
there, but I don't know really. Is it just honeysuckle and stuff like that that is not great, or what's it
No,
like?
there's deciduous trees along there. There's
Okay.
probably a few evergreens as well. I mean, you can kind of see on the aerial, and maybe even on the other one, Paul, that's the winter one. It's a fairly decent stand of trees that are along there, both at north and west property
Okay.
lines.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Ms. DeVazio.
Not to beat that dead horse, but here I am. The 25-foot that you have listed as no build, is that truly a no disturb
Yes.
while you're building? So nothing should move
And
out of there,
again,
correct?
Bob, yeah.
Okay. How is that working in conjunction with the mound or berm with the evergreens that you're planning on putting? Is that, I'm assuming, on the inside of that,
Bob, you want
towards the buildings?
It would be mainly on the inside of it. It could encroach into it a little bit if there's no trees in that area. It might not be just a straight line. It may serpentine through there.
Okay, so from anyone who owns these individual homes, they're mostly going to be looking at evergreens with, I hate to use the word scrub, but behind it. And anyone sitting in the other neighborhoods are going to be looking at, as it is today, with the backdrop of evergreen, correct?
Correct.
Okay. The other question I have is, in reading and listening, you mentioned the last meeting that you were looking into an overflow structure, but that nothing had been determined. I may have misread that. I'd just like some more information.
No, actually, what I have shown on the revised plan is an overflow structure for the lake with a note that that would be installed once there's an agreement with the neighbors.
Okay.
Give a little bit more background on that, Bob,
Yeah,
how
right.
it works, when
Yeah, right now, there's really just an overflow weir. So on a heavy rainstorm, the lake fills up and just goes over top. This structure would more control the flow coming out of the lake to help the issue with some of the erosion and things that are happening downstream of the dam. Most lakes have, excuse me, some type of an overflow structure like that. Older ones just have a weir. Now, right now, that weir has caused some severe erosion, and that's a problem that needs to be addressed as well. It's not on our property, it's on the neighbor's property. The dam itself is mostly on our property, but that erosion where that overflow is on the neighbor's property. You know, this overflow structure would eliminate the need for that water to go over the overflow structure and cause erosion. It would take it down to the bottom of the dam and discharge it in the swale below the dam.
Okay. And if I'm understanding what you just said, that will not be put into place unless there is a maintenance agreement with the other two property owners?
That's what I put on the plan, yes. At
Okay.
the time, I was thinking there was going to be a maintenance agreement by this meeting, but not the case. So.
Okay. I think that's all I have right now.
Mr. Lewis.
Okay, so at the end of the last meeting, we did identify 4 areas, the lake maintenance agreement, the density. We've addressed those 2. The density has changed. It's improved as far as the open space. We did, again, the existing trees. I agree. I was hoping to see more a finite listing of, you know, yes, we have this space, yes, where it's going to be undisturbed, but there is no inventory has been taken to what's going to be there. I know there's this huge tree right in the middle, and that's obviously going to go. But on the surrounding area, just saying it's undisturbed, I guess we'd like to see a little bit more detail. And then the surrounding neighbors, I'm sure we're going to hear the impact of that. As far as the development itself, is this going to be built, what is the length of the construction phase?
I would say it's something in the 60 to 90-day range to construct the subdivision itself. As far as the homes themselves, that's probably going to be market-driven.
So you're going to wait till you sell to build each of the 17?
I would think they would, yes.
So what are you
I mean,
going to do?
there may be some.
2 months, but the other 15, you'll sell the models last? Okay. What are you going to do during the construction phase if it goes for 2 years, 3 years, to protect and preserve the lake as far as, you know, silt fence, I mean,
Yeah, the
things
county-
going in there, changing the composition and
Right,
whatnot?
the county requires us to, you know, keep all silt on site. That's not only for the development itself, but for the builders. The individual plot plans we do for builders show erosion control on them as well, which is enforced by mainly Soil and Water, Hamilton County Soil and Water.
So best case scenario, what is the duration, planned duration of the construction?
How many lots a year do you think?
Okay.
I mean, if it was 1 lot a month, you'd be there
Yeah.
a year and a half building houses if it was,
I'm not I'm not building, I'm asking the people who do this for a living, so,
yeah, it's kind of market-driven, really.
okay. All right, no other questions?
we can have Ashford come in to address that, the anticipated absorption on this.
I mean, obviously, you've come up with some plan.
If you could state your name and address and affiliation, please.
Yes, Jack Rupp, Ashford Homes, 9929 Cincinnati Columbus Road, Cincinnati 45241. Yeah, it's probably a 2-year project. Typically, we'll do 10 a year. And to answer the first question, we will do some market homes, just to have some homes ready to go. Not everybody wants to start from scratch and spend 8 months, you know, going through the process. A lot of these folks have been through the process. They'd like to see a finished product. We will have a decorated model with the sales rep in there, so it should be less than 2 years.
Have you identified which lots would be the market homes?
Not yet. No.
Okay. Thank you. I don't know if you had a question, come back to?
Thanks.
I have some questions of the applicant. It was stated that it's a non-disturbance, but the mound may flow in and out of it, and those aren't related. If the mound flows into a non-disturbed area, then it's really disturbed, correct?
And again, I don't want to provide any testimony, but Bob, you want to go back and reiterate that, how that'll work?
It would be
And
more,
maybe identify, Bob, if you can identify the lots too.
well,
Thank you, Mr. Drury.
10, 11, 12, mainly a little bit of 13. The reason I stated that is if there's an area where there's no trees, and we'd want to, serpentine into that and put trees in that area. I mean, for the most part, it'll probably be outside of that 25-foot buffer because, as you saw on the aerial, that's a fairly decent tree buffer that's not there already.
Yeah. Again, like the other commission members have stated, it's really hard to know where those trees are off of the marked up plans that
Right.
were submitted. So a tree survey would have been very beneficial like we asked about before. Looking at the east property line, there's a non-disturbed area there. What's the width of that?
10 feet.
And is that truly gonna be undisturbed?
That
or is
will
that
truly
gonna
be undisturbed, yeah,
Maybe
it's
if we
kinda-
need to build a mound into
It's kind of
it, that'd
down
be
over the hill there.
Concerning the sign at the entrance, we saw the image, will that be constructed to meet all the township zoning requirements as far as height area? Everything will be per the standards of the Anderson
At the
Township
risk of
zoning.
providing testimony on that issue, absolutely.
The staff, have you had a chance to review the dimensions of the?
There's no dimensions on it. But that's something staff could review to make sure it meets the standard when it's submitted. Talked about there's no detention into the lake and any flow into the lake is what's existing. Can that be guaranteed that any, no additional, water will be at post-development as there is pre-development?
Yes. It's, when I look at where the top of the ridge is now, on the topo, it's almost over by into the street area. So, we're gonna be taking the street and all the hard surface downspouts from the buildings down to the detention on Clough Pike.
Maybe if Mr. Rother, maybe this will help as to where the water will be directed naturally.
Yeah, I mean, really, the rear yards of lots, 4 through 9, which are the ones, well, not really, 5 through 9, which are the ones that kind of back up onto the lake. They've got really a 25-foot rear yard. That's pretty much, depending on how deep the house is, that 25-foot rear yard plus whatever from there to the house, the grass area will drain to the lake. But that will be less area, I believe, than what's going in there right now.
But really, is the soil absorption coefficient after developing, doesn't that actually decrease? Pre-development versus post-development?
That's why we have to detain, yes. I mean, you're taking grass area and putting hard surface in, which, 90% of that runs off. On grass areas, it's probably, 40% runs off.
So you're gonna over-detain on, in essence, try to flow more water towards the actual storm detention, so you're not increasing because of the development?
Yeah, what we have to do is detain a volume of water and release it at the pre-developed rate. So it holds it back for a period of time and releases at a slower rate.
But I guess what I'm trying to get across is after you develop, you'll actually, even if you don't change grades and the amount of water that's flowing towards the lake, that area is not increased, you're actually increase the flow into the lake because of the development and the working of the land, so to speak.
No, it'll still be grass, just like it is now.
Okay.
Same runoff coefficient.
So Bob, if I could ask you, can you explain, looking at the topographical map, the topographical lines, going from the top down to the bottom as to where the natural flow was, and if you can extrapolate that out as to what it would be post-development?
That's a little difficult to do. Suffice it to say that where I see the ridge on that drawing, where it breaks and goes towards the lake, or it breaks and goes towards Clough Pike.
Is that at 748.8?
No, it would be more at that one above that
782.
782 contour. That's kind of the middle of the ridge. So that's where it breaks going north and south. You know, our homes are going to be to the north of that with downspouts that are going to be directed into so this is kind of the ridge line along here. So everything over here is right now draining into the lake. Everything over here is coming down towards Clough Pike. Our homes are going to be sitting to the north of where that ridge line is now, but we are going to be picking up that hard surface and bringing it down to the detention down here on Clough. So we're not going to be increasing flow into the lake.
Any other questions of the applicant?
Yeah, I had another one, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But
Mr.
I-
Ella.
If I could direct it to the Ashford Homes representative, please. At a prior meeting on this case, there was discussion on your home product and the finished materials on the homes. What were you planning to do with that?
Well, it's all going to be cement board siding. There will not be any vinyl or aluminum wraps. So stone combination, brick combination, but nothing vinyl or aluminum.
That was my question, thank you. And then I was also, and this is for Mr. Gunning, so thank you, or Mr. Palo. And I recall this being described, and I see it in writing, as a lifestyle community. Does that mean that all the exterior maintenance items are being taken care of as part of the development?
I would think not, but again, maybe that's an Ashford question. Pat?
Well, it'll be up to the developer and how he writes it up, I think, not the home builder.
Mr. Eliff, they're going to be single-family homes, so they're not going to be landominiums. I don't know that.
That
Pat, you
answers
wanna
my
speak to
question,
that?
if that's correct, so
Yeah.
I'll mow my own lawn and kind of thing.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I would think so.
Okay, I just saw that description on there. Is that correct? Okay. Thank you.
With that, if anyone else would like to speak in favor of the application? Seeing no hands, if anyone would like to speak opposed? Yes, sir. Again, please state your name and address and affiliation of the case, please.
Hi, my name's James Caddy and I live at 7461 Ginger Lane, which is the property you can see directly north on the map. Oh, sorry, yeah. That one there.
Could we see the overhead aerial besides that topo map? Might help a little bit.
We have this one.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Okay.
After the comments made by the Commission and the community at the last meeting, I was hopeful that something really positive would come out of it. From a personal standpoint, I've been encouraged by the extra 15 feet of undisturbed buffers. I believe this means little of the existing tree line will be touched at the north and northwest corner that boundaries our home and neighbours on Breton. This is so vital to us as we sit considerably lower than the land on Clough 7488. Therefore, the density of the tree line, together with the height of the mature trees, is needed to provide adequate screening to both us and our future neighbours. There's been discussion around the planting, which wasn't obvious to me initially. So, and I still share the concerns about the details around the actual planting plans. So I was still curious as to whether or not the evergreen planting is proposed, as we hadn't seen the landscaping plan, and that had been mentioned numerous times. During the summer months, the green and leafy wall is in full bloom. The winter is a completely different story. There's no evergreen trees in that bank of trees at the top. We intend on doing some planting ourselves, but due to sitting a lot lower, it will be many years before this offers us any privacy or the future neighbours. But, and this is a big but, I feel this is where the positive end. Every other single concern I have raised and heard over the last few months still remain unaddressed in any meaningful way, the biggest of which is the perceived density and the format of the new homes. Empty nesters or not, I am disappointed that the lots remain almost completely unchanged since the last months, bar the removal of the two directly on Clough. I see this as yet another missed opportunity to show willing and a genuine appreciation of the issues that have been raised from day one at the open house and every other meeting since. I question why the removal of the two lots hasn't been used to enhance the remaining lots by either increasing their size or adding more space in between, or both. I guess the removal of two lots is probably not significant enough to have a large enough impact. Last month, Mr. Henson asked if there was a visual of the PUD overlaid on the existing neighbourhood. I and other neighbours had produced one, but unfortunately, I did not have that with me at the time. I have now created several updated visuals that accurately overlay what is proposed on the KGIS map. I have used the elevations provided by Mr. Gunning at the last meeting to also show homes on the lots, specifically the Marquette plan. It looked to me like both elevations are very similar in footprint with a width of near 39 feet. Bearing in mind many of the PUD lots only have a buildable width of 40 feet, it's easy to get a feel for how crammed in everything will feel. Again, it's that perceived density that I'm worried about rather than the technical mathematical density. I've got some of those diagrams with me if I may share them with you quickly.
You have one for staff. Staff has to have one also. And your time is. Okay.
Do you have an electronic version at all? Please send it to staff. So the first page is the new plans overlaid on the neighbourhood, sort of quite close in, and it's showing a wider field of view. And then I've worked out the actual scale of the floor plans that were provided and placed those on, so you can get a feel for the actual perceived density. And then I've done the same overlaying on KGIS as well, both close in and far out. I did also have This is from your property looking? This is from like from 748, but looking back at our property.
You can just
So like lot 10.
It's just to show the height difference.
Mr. Caddy, so it's like lot 10, looking into your.
Yeah, 10 and 11, somewhere around there. So to conclude, I'm deeply disappointed that we stand here again with real reservations to what has been proposed. I had genuinely hoped that an amicable PUD solution could be reached that worked for Mr. Gunning and the local community. I think it currently falls far short of that. I thank you for your time and your diligence.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak opposed? Yes, sir.
Jim Essendui. I live with my wife at 7485 Ginger Lane. Ours is this house here. So it looks directly across the lake at the development. I'll speak to the lake maintenance agreement first. We have, my wife and I have reached agreement with Mr. Gunning's team on a form of lake maintenance agreement. We've negotiated and commented on that the last several weeks and wrapped up at the end of last week. So the last turn was Thursday or Friday of last week. We were coming back from vacation, so we haven't executed it yet. But there were a couple of questions that I wanted to clarify prior to executing it anyways. You've touched on, I believe, both of them. One is not as much a focal point within the agreement, but does speak to a concern that I raised, I think, at the first meeting, which was, you know, what privacy is going to be protected for us? I understand, you know, with the development, there's always going to be some give and take. But, you know, we haven't seen any plan for any type of screening, any type of landscaping that would shield our view or our house and our yard, which is essentially the side of the lake here, that's really what we have, from the development. So I'm curious if we are going to be viewing, 7, 8 different homes and banks of windows and decks across the way, or if we'll have trees that will remain or be planted on that far shore. The second piece you also touched on and relates to the drainage from the lake. We have had some discussions with Mr. Gunning along the way. I would first question where they believe the dam and the drainage weir to reside. I know they've had surveyors out. I've seen the flags. I've walked the area myself, and my perception is that both of those are on Mr. Gunning's property as opposed to our property, as has been stated a couple of times. What it has done, though, from the drainage over that dam is created a pretty significant erosion issue on our property, which is a strip that extends past the pond and all the way down to Clough Pike. So we're interested in solving that as well. I know that in previous discussions and in correspondence that has taken place between Mr. Adams and Mr. Drury, that it was stated that quote, the developer will adjust, the developer is going to repair the spillway outflow pipe and keep the lake at approximately the current level. That was correspondence from April 9th. I'm curious if that's still the proposal as part of this PUD petition, or if we'll be getting a bill for a third of that, and Mr. and Mrs. Lipowitz will be getting a bill for a third of that as well. Those are, aside from the other issues that have been mentioned, I won't belabor those points. We don't support 17 houses on that side of the pond. We certainly don't think that that's in keeping with the neighborhood, but the other two issues are the more focal points for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak opposed?
Carl Lipowich, 7487 Ginger Lane, 12-year resident of the pond. We're directly on it right there. I need to address a lot of things so far. I think, first of all, the applicant's counsel indicated that everybody agrees that regular zoning doesn't make any sense. The reason we're here is because we want regular zoning. So I don't know why that was brought up. Our issue is basically unresolved from the last meeting. There was a major concern raised by Mr. Lewis, amongst others, about the concentration. And with all due respect, removing 2 lots on the bottom of Clough that nobody in the surrounding neighborhoods would see is sort of like putting boots on a pig to make the math work. It doesn't change the underlying issue, which is every other surrounding property, and if you could expand it back, is the average acreage of everything surrounding it is 0.8 acres. And what's being proposed is 6,000 square feet. It's just out of touch with reality. It's 40-some% in some cases of current zoning. That's the issue for us. The reason that I haven't committed to the lake maintenance agreement is I was out of town for work all weekend. I came directly here from Chicago, left important business meetings to be here, unfortunately. What I would share with you is one of my concerns is that we are agreeing in the lake maintenance agreement as written to remove a third of the sedimentation that occurs in the pond. And amongst the emails were exchanged were plans that were submitted to fill in a portion of the pond. And I think the attorney for the applicant indicated that even with the PUD, part of the pond would need to get filled in. And why I would agree to remove sedimentation when they're going to be putting stuff in the pond potentially makes no sense to me. And that's sort of this is it in a nutshell, guys. I mean, this is why we're here for the 4th time, and I understand your frustration. It's as simple as the applicant submitted under oath last meeting that nobody would be able to use the pond for any recreational purposes, and you guys didn't believe them, so now all of a sudden it's $150 to fish. It's like they're making it up as they go. There is no plan. There's no landscaping plan, which you guys have asked for multiple times. This is the 4th meeting. I'm sure you're tired of talking about it. I'm tired of being here talking about it. And it's going to be developed. If he was going to build it to current zoning, we wouldn't be here. So we understand that. We respectfully request again that you not continue this tonight. If you don't have everything you need, you vote it down. It needs to come to an end. We need our lives back. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak opposed? Yes, sir. If you could state your name and address.
My name is Brent Hollenbeck. I live at 2262 Breton Drive. I'm the left side of the picture there. I've got quite a bit of abutment with the proposed development. I know this is a difficult job for you. There's a lot to balance, but it's been very frustrating, especially when you want to have just facts delivered to the commission, because everyone's using the word density differently. So it's a different thing. And what you have to decide is whether what they're proposing really is in line with what's been zoned. This is mathematically correct. The Upper East Side of Manhattan is zoned perfectly for this if you include Central Park. It's massive. It's wonderful, but it's different from what's in Anderson Township. Another thing that hasn't been pointed out, I think, we've talked about the amount of traffic on Clough, which we don't control, Hamilton County has, but the point is thousands of people will be going by. This will be their impression of housing in Anderson Township, and they're going to see these buildings 10 feet from each other. That is dense housing, and having a patch of open space here and a patch of open space there doesn't change that. The perception is that it's dense. So when you spoke last time and said that density was a concern, I spoke on it, a number of people when they're speaking. The density we're talking about is the density between the houses. That's what controls the character of a neighborhood. That is why the zoning that we're talking about with the A and B2 is zoned per lot, because it's the space between the houses that makes a difference. And if they're going to get a PUD that gets some benefit or some easement of what is required by the zoning, everything about what the zoning rules say, it should be as close as possible to what is required for everyone else within that zone. As James McCaddy's pictures have pointed out, it's going to be visually and aesthetically very different. And I think from what is required under the rules, they need to be closer to the density between houses that's required. If they need some easement of that, I understand. But this is simply eliminating that. And that's what people are going to see from Clough. I'll, of course, see it from my house, as I've mentioned a number of times. But anyway, that's been my frustration, is that when people use the word density, they're actually talking about different things. And you can make it a mathematical problem that can be abstracted to the whole city of Anderson Township, or the township of Anderson Township, the whole city of New York. The point is that density has to do with as specific and small a space as possible. Certainly the zoning works off of the lot for a house.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak opposed?
Good afternoon again. Mark Owenbrink, 2127 Wolf Angle. I'm the southeast resident in the picture, one north of the resident on Clough Pike. So just immediately west of me is this creek that's been discussed many times. It's the overflow from the lake. And we've talked a fair amount about that before. But you know, my concern kind of remains the same. If there's not a legal agreement here about maintenance of the lake, reduction of the massive erosion that's already there, how the existing erosion is going to be fixed, how we're not going to be making it worse in the future, you know, I have a hard time supporting the effort. The erosion directly affects me and my property, and you know, if it doesn't get better, I got a real structural problem here. Now, Mr. Gunning has committed to, you know, clean out some of the brush in this creek and whatnot, but I really think we need to get the players together here on this lake agreement. You know, there's a legal part of it, but the reality is, without this agreement, there's an ongoing, probably protracted legal process here that's gonna go who knows how long, and I don't think anybody wants that. In addition, on this creek, if we're talking about walkouts on these units down the east side here, it wasn't clear to me, where's the runoff going from these downspouts? Is it gonna be going into the creek, or is it somehow gonna be going back west and down into a collection area? Maybe we could get clarification on that. That would be helpful. Because if it's going into the creek, it's making a big problem worse. Okay. We talked a little bit about sidewalks. Glad to hear there's gonna be a sidewalk in the community, but the reality is there's nothing to connect it to. There's no sidewalk on Clough. There's no sidewalk on Wolfangle. And it's tough topo to ever make that happen. So, you know, we had some type of commitment of running the sidewalk from the end of this road, proposed road, to Wolfangle. But I don't see how, from an engineering perspective, that's possible. Clough is 40 miles an hour with steep drop-off on both sides between this property and Wolfangle. I don't know how you built a sidewalk there. Okay. Water quality, I think it was brought up before, but just to make sure we're all clear here, it's not just a private issue here between the players involved. The water quality in this creek is a big problem. It's a public problem, and maybe we could use that to get this agreement going here with this lake. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Anyone else like to speak opposed? Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, were you sworn in? No, ma'am. Okay. If you could. I was trying to keep track of who was and who wasn't.
Oh, it's
so-
only my 4th time here.
Yes, I
for the
know.
same thing. It's fine.
Each one's a whole new adventure.
It's all good, man.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. If you could state your name and address.
My name is Kimberly Howell. I'm at 2256 Breton Drive, 45244. Just again, 4th time in a row. We know this is all going to be developed, which is great. My view from my backyard will change. But the bigger thing is it's just a cluster of homes that don't fit anywhere else in our neighborhoods or our surrounding neighborhoods. And although it's stated that we need such housing, there is housing like this in Anderson, and I don't know if folks are taking full advantage of it. No one's against this necessarily being developed. We just don't like the proposal, and we don't see why there's a PUD required. So that's it. I agree with everyone else.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak opposed? Yes, sir.
Hello, Neil Hancock, 2151 Wolfangle Road. Let's see, it's right over here. Goes from about here down to here. I just want to say that I agree with the previous testimony, and especially as per the density from our property, we can see off onto the lake, and we'll have straight line of sight into the high density area of the proposal. So even though they removed houses, to us it's still going to look like a high density cluster. So that's what I want to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak opposed? Yes, ma'am. Were you sworn in, ma'am? Okay. You could raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth and whole, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
I actually got stuck in traffic trying to get here from soccer tryouts for my son. So today,
Can you state your name
I'm
and
sorry,
address? That's okay. Name and address.
It's Monica Essendui, 7485 Ginger Lane, and I'm the top right house on the map. So John Grove is a neighbor who lives on Ginger behind us, and he couldn't be here today, but he put something together. He shared it with a couple of us. I read it. I agree with it. So tonight is going to be my statement. I have something, it's an update from, I think, something that he submitted before that I'd like to share with you all. And this is what he says that I agree with. The 20 residents surrounding the PUD sit on an average of 0.8 acres. The development after the pond, open space, and street sidewalk improvements are taken out contains 3.33 prime acres of land. This would allow 7 houses under A2 zoning and 5 houses under B zoning. Mr. Gunning can build 12 houses and conform to the zoning requirements. If the developer is responsible and competent, he can make a handsome profit. PUD is not necessary to develop the property. We should not have to see zoning laws ignored without reason and the essential characteristics of our established neighborhood substantially altered so an outside developer can maximize profits. We already live in Anderson Township and we pay our taxes. We should also be heard. I ask that you, the zoning commission, enforce the zoning laws on the books and do not approve this PUD. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak opposed? Seeing no hands, if the applicant would like to address any of the comments that they have heard?
Thank you, Mr. Goddard. Just one comment. Regarding Mr. Lipswich, I apologize if I mispronounced your name. There is no plan to, if this PUD is approved, there is no plan to fill in the lake. None. And so I don't know, he probably misunderstood some communication. This does comply with zoning. Do we go straight zoning? Do we do PUD? If we go PUD, I think that's the benefit for everyone. But I can tell you there is no plan to fill in that lake if this is PUD. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I had a follow-up question for either the legal counsel or the developer about the fishing. Someone brought it up, and it's a valid point, that we talked about this in the past, in previous meetings. There was talk about having a 12-month agreement for the residents, and then they'd have to renegotiate or sign up for something new. Now we're talking about something, an annual fishing, which would be a calendar base versus a 12-month rolling.
Yeah,
and how does that go against or with Ohio law
Yeah,
for fishing?
I can clarify that, and I don't think I'd be providing testimony. The fishing fee was part of the negotiations during the process of the maintenance agreement. It has always been fishing only for that lake. It always will be. That will be built into the HOA documents, fishing only. The fishing fee will be in the HOA documents.
But how does that compare to Ohio revised code? Maybe our council, I don't know if your breadth of covers the fishing on private property.
I can. We did look into that. My opinion was it's private property, so it does not have to be in compliance with Ohio Department of Natural Resource regulations, which regulates private property fishing rights and licensing. So again, you cannot rely on that whatsoever. It would have to be your legal counsel.
Yeah.
But we did look into it. It would be a private lake, a private
This is
fee.
just a new wrinkle that's
Yeah.
come up at this.
And that was only during
iteration.
the process of the negotiations with the maintenance agreement.
Any other questions? of the
Yes, I have some questions for Mr. Rother, which is, Mr. Owenbrink was wondering, what's happening on his side, which is I guess the east side, his house is over there. That's where the lake's overflowing and it's, not working. So let's assume I don't see a lake agreement happening here. I did hear one of the residents said he signed it, but one of them hasn't, and it's only for a year. So let's assume there's no agreement with the lake. What's the developer going to be able to do to help the lake function, at least keep it overflowing where it's supposed to overflow and stopping the erosion problem, if anything?
I don't know if he'd be able to do anything if he didn't have permission to get on the property to
Well, you're going to own over half of it, so.
But the erosion problem is not on our property.
Well, that's what the road, then that may have nothing to do with the lake agreement then.
It might
Right.
not, yeah.
Okay, well, if there's no lake agreement, are you saying there's nothing that to be done about the erosion? And you're saying if there is a lake agreement, there's nothing to be done about the erosion? There's nothing to be done.
No, I'm not saying that.
Okay.
I think they would just have to agree that we could go onto their property to cure the problem. Simple as that.
So it's not a function of the lake at all? The erosion problem? Because I thought
The erosion
I heard
problem
it
is
spilling over.
It is a
because
function of the lake, yeah, because
the
it's.
outlet facility's not working properly,
Right,
right?
I mean, typically, when you have an overflow from a lake like that, it would be either a concrete spillway
Yeah,
or a rock line channel.
yeah.
Well, it's not, it's just an earthen overflow.
nothing.
So it's continually eroding. At some point,
I
it could
see.
be a major problem if it's not addressed.
Hmm.
And Mr. Rother, whose property is the spillway on?
It is on, the spillway is right in the corner of the lake, so the spillway itself could possibly be on our property. The erosion channel as it comes down is over here on this property. There's actually a panhandle that goes all the way down to Clough Pike, and actually there's a chunk of ground right here that's all part of this owner's property. So that overflow comes out of here and works its way over and then kind of down in that 20-foot panhandle or whatever the width of that is, out to the Clough Pike area where it goes underneath Clough Pike and the storm sewer.
So associated with this possible development, is there anything you can do? Or his answer is, not really, we have to get on somebody else's property that has nothing to do with this, except he's in a joiner.
An overflow system could be put in that's totally on our property. To repair the erosion problem, though, that's on someone else's property.
Right. And what,
that exists is actually about 8 feet into the center of the pond. And it's designed to drain directly behind the dam, underneath the dam. And then if it's a really heavy rain, it does run over the spillway area that he's discussing, which is in the corner of the property.
Yes, the overflow pipe is just a 6 or 8 inch pipe. It's very small. It's not big enough to handle much of a rainstorm.
okay. And then he was asking also for the houses that might be installed along the eastern part of the new road.
Yes.
That he was asking, will their runoff be directed to your retention facility, or will it just flow off east into this already eroding area?
It'll be directed into the retention facility
Okay,
with a collector line.
thank you.
Any other questions of the applicant? With that, we'll close the public hearing.
Kind of a question for staff.
Okay.
Yes, I also had a question for staff.
You could Just the chair. Yeah.
Sure. We will reopen the public hearing. That's okay? Yes, please.
My name's James Caddy. I live on 7461. Just in relation to what's being talked about, the overflow on the lake, I feel it's important to just share some information. There's a roundabout here. I believe there's a pipe that runs under this. This is Breton that runs here. There's a big pipe that runs under here, spits out here, and then goes back underground again, runs all the way along here, and back into that lake. So the lake is effectively acting as a retention pond for Breton. So I believe that's partly responsible for the sheer amount of water that's going into the lake as well. I just wanted to add that.
Interesting.
Thank you. All right.
Unknown
Mr.
pipe.
Lewis,
I had a question for
staff?
staff about the question that was raised about the sidewalks. Is there anything on Clough, or is it all within the proposed neighborhood?
So there is, our trails plan identifies a connection to Wolfangle. Long-term, there are plans to tie the existing sidewalks on Wolfangle together. So,
And into the 5-mile trail?
correct. You'll be able to access the 5-mile trail via going south to State or going north to Hunley. Or, some there are some connections through Bloomfield Hills. I
Okay.
think unofficial connections. So the sidewalk, we encourage the applicant, the developer wanted sidewalks on both sides of their street. Sometimes with a small cul-de-sac, we just encourage them to do one side of the walk, but they preferred to have sidewalk on both sides of the street. And then we're requesting the connection to their property line. Obviously, they can't go beyond their property line unless the county will permit it in the right of way, to connect to Wolf Angle.
Okay.
But correct, there is no sidewalk on Wolf Angle in the immediate vicinity, but there are plans in our trails and walkway plans to tie the existing walk on Wolf Angle together.
Okay, thank you.
And can I ask a question of staff too? Sorry.
Sure.
Hey, Paul, the plan we're looking at is this one dated May 3rd, 2019. It shows 17 lots.
Correct.
Because I just noticed in the notes, it says 19 lots. I assume that's just a typo, right?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. And then the other question I had, I'm going to go back to this buffer around 10, 11, and 12. So my questions were answered by the developer and Mr. Rothert about there's just some uncertainty there. There's natural vegetation. We don't really know. And then we have the graphic showing conceptually what would be put in there. I mean, so the burden if this was approved, would fall on your office. And somebody'd say, this isn't a buffer, this is a good buffer. The developer would make probably a good faith attempt to fill in the holes and stuff. But I just don't know how you can enforce that, something that's that vague. Can you tell me, is that going to be satisfactory for you guys if you're getting called out there to determine if there's a sufficient buffer or not? Because this picture Mr. Caddy gave us kind of confirmed what I was wondering, which is it's not great. I can see right through there to his house. And I'm not saying that's a deal killer. I'm just saying that needs to have some mounding and evergreen trees put in there. But I don't know that, I don't know. What do you think?
So I've been writing down scenarios. So obviously, one scenario is that if you don't feel comfortable making a decision without knowing what type of landscaping is, to continue it and leave it open, as we have been doing.
I don't know if I wanna
Second
do that.
scenario would be to close the public hearing portion and only request specific information to help you make a decision. There would be no additional testimony given on that, but it would be additional information for you to help you make your decision. You can, if you chose to approve it, you can put specific conditions and rely on staff to ensure that those conditions are met. I have a little difference of opinion on how this would progress through review of the subdivision review process. With the PUD plan, the county will not accept an application until they have zoning approval from the township. And a way that we can ensure all the conditions are met is we would approve a PUD compliance plan. So essentially, we would have a document with this meeting all the conditions if you chose to approve it, and that would be what would be submitted to the county for the first meeting or the subdivision review process. Those are just some of the scenarios. If you choose to approve, with conditions, I would just recommend that they're very specific as to what you're looking for. Are you looking for, because I agree that the document showing the evergreen trees is too conceptual. We did hear, I thought I heard that a mound was proposed, but at the same time, you can't mound an existing vegetation because that'll kill existing vegetation. And then there's not showing any mounding on the topography plan. So it's unclear if mounding is going to be used or not. What type of evergreens? We would never recommend the same species of evergreens be used. We would recommend a variety of evergreens in case one gets a disease, so that they are not all lost. I would be very specific on the height of evergreens that you would be expecting, whether they're 6 feet tall, 8 feet tall, 4 feet tall.
Okay.
Those are just the scenarios I've been jotting down.
The whole lake thing, too, is a mess. And I'm not seeing agreement among the parties on this at all. And they're not really the ones being affected. It's the people downstream that are getting that erosion, and they're not having a say in it. But can we require that as part of this development, the outflow structure of that lake be fixed, since they own 2/3 of it?
I think I would turn that over to the.
Well, not to dodge, but I think I heard the developer say that they might be willing to do that. So whether you can require it or not, I mean, it is shown at least potentially on their plan. But I would suggest first asking the developer if that's something they'd be willing to do.
Well, because it's a real problem, and this might be an opportunity to fix it, but I really not sure we want to approve it if it's just going to continue to be a problem. So I don't know.
Any other questions of staff? All right, any other discussion amongst the commission? We'll start with you, Mr. Ellis.
Oh, right. Well, I just said a whole bunch.
That's why we started back with you.
Thanks a lot. I really like the development, actually. And I said this the first meeting, which is the plans of the township aren't planning for what's around it. So what this board is tasked with is to see if we can make it work. And I've heard a number of the residents say, no way, this isn't working for me, and also that there's a lot of problems. I do like the houses. I did note after I heard Mr. Caddy at the last meeting say these are not empty nester houses, which made me want to take a close look at the drawings. I think although they're two-story, I do think they're empty nester houses. I do think they fit that plan. I agree the lots are tight, but empty nesters product doesn't have big lots anymore. That's just the fact. So when I look at it, that's why I was wondering about this buffering, and I don't have a clear answer on that. Sounds like there's a way we could make it work, but we're not going to see it in front of us, and I don't think it makes sense to continue it again. And this is the opportunity to fix the lake. So I think if we approve it, you know, I think there should be a condition that the lake outlet structure be fixed. And I don't know if that'll hold up or not, but this is the only chance we're going to have to fix it, where we have somebody, a developer with means that maybe can fix the thing. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. Ms. DiBaggio.
I agree with Commissioner Ellis' statements thus far. The buffering and the lack of a definitive landscaping plan for me is quite concerning, because we're really not sure how this is going to go. I am concerned about the current trees and buffering that is there. I'd like those to be able to stay as much as possible. We have no idea at this point in time what can and what cannot, but some of them are older growth and should be allowed to stay. The lake outlet, I have to agree there also. I feel as though not so much for the 3 property holders, so much as those downstream. You know, and I feel it's all about being a good neighbor, to be honest with you, that I think that it's important. I understand legally we can't force them to have a maintenance agreement, so perhaps that is a good second choice, that at least it will repair the issue. Won't repair all the issues, but it'll take care of part of it. I honestly am still undecided as to how to move forward with this or not. But those are my 2 concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
Having been here for the different iterations, we've seen movement in the right direction as far as less lots, the buffers, the setbacks and whatnot. But I keep coming back to the key phrase in the PUD, about without detriment to neighboring properties. And we've heard and we've seen evidence that this, in this density, does not really fit into the neighboring properties. The reality is this could be built as A2 and as B. And the residents, I think, are resigned to that fact that will happen. But to push something onto them through the PUD process, when that is a key criteria I have issue with at this point.
And, you know, I think all the statements made, but, you know, that is sort of the nature of the PUD, is to allow for, you know, open space that is not built, not disturbed, you know, to be credited towards, you know, lot size for a sort of higher density of construction zone, but, you know, gaining back some of those, you know, open spaces as credits towards that. You know, I am a little bit concerned about the undisturbed area maybe being disturbed, maybe not. You know, if a mound is going to be built, it should be totally out of an undisturbed area. And I think we should put some sort of, you know, guidelines or requirements of what is expected for those screenings if we do make a motion. So with that, open it to the commission if anyone would like to make a motion concerning this case or any other sort of guidance on what to do. Please. Or any other discussion points?
I believe I stated where I would come down.
Would you like to make a motion?
I would, I guess, make a motion to deny at this point, based on the PUD process. I don't believe it fits. So.
Do we have a second for that motion? Or another motion?
I will second that motion.
Okay, thank you. Could you call roll, please?
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. DeBaggio?
Aye.
Mr. Elick?
Aye.
Mr. Gothard?
No. All right, thank you all very much. With that, we'll wait till the audience that wants to leave will leave. Okay, with that, if anyone has not been sworn in, that plans on speaking on the next, please rise. Okay, seeing no hands, we will continue quasi-judicial hearing for public, or planned unit development, case 2-2019. Mr. Drury.
If you'll just bear with me, our slides got out of order tonight, so I apologize. I said our slides got out of order tonight, so I apologize for getting them.
Well, while he's doing that, I'll just add on this one, I did look at the videotape on this too, which was interesting to watch. And also, Mr. Hartman contacted my office the other day about something totally unrelated. I knew we had this case pending, but I wasn't here, and I said, did your case get approved? And he said, I had to do some redesign, and I said, well, I can't talk to you about it any further. And obviously, from the tape I watched, he had to, that was a request, so I don't think I have any issue with hearing it tonight. Just wanted to let you know.
Thank you. Any commission members have a concern on Mr. Ellis' statements?
No concerns about that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ellis.
Okay, the applicant, this is case 2, 2019 PUD. The The applicant is Keaton Patel on behalf of SAS Property LLC and Ria's Place LLC, who are the property owners. The locations at 6685 and 6675 Salem Road. The zoning there is E retail. And the request is to approve a PUD application to redevelop the existing vacant building and fueling station as an approximately 2850 square foot drive-through convenience store and fueling station with variances. Again, this case was continued. The zoning commission requested reconsideration of the flow of the site, including the number of parking spaces, location of the dumpster, and maneuverability around the site. So we'll go through the slides very quickly here. Again, 2850 square foot of a drive-through convenience store and fueling station, demolition of the existing store and fueling canopy, a 1,728 square foot new fueling canopy with 4 new fueling pumps, 7 parking spaces. The existing freestanding, there are 2 freestanding signs on the property which are proposed to be removed. The ISR was not provided. This is the site in question. This is the Salem, and this is Bernie. These are the existing fueling canopy, and this was the former Clark gas station. And this is the former Keegan seafood store. This is the aerial of the site in question. The zoning map, the topography map, which is fairly flat. There is an increase in grade as you go south. The zoning is E. The surrounding to the east is zoned single family. This corner here is the city of Cincinnati, zoned single family. To the north is zoned retail, and then as you go west on Salem, it's also single family. So this is the revised site plan that identifies maneuverability with the fueling tanker in order to fill the tanks. That was one of the questions at the last meeting. There were 2 parking spaces up against the building which have been removed. The handicap space has been relocated along the southern row of parking spaces. There was concern about access to the dumpster. The dumpster was formerly in this corner here. The applicant has moved it to the opposite corner. And those are the main differences. These are the elevation drawings, the fueling canopy. A fuel provider was selected, and then elevations of the building itself. There are elevations of the dumpster enclosure as well. The lighting plan, which is compliant with current zoning. These are just some of the site photos we'll go through really quickly. Makes you appreciate hot days, doesn't it? All right, so back to there are still several variance requests with the revised plan, and we'll go through those really quickly. Article 5.3D1D requires a 10-foot streetscape buffer along the street frontage. The applicant is requesting an 8-foot streetscape buffer between the building and Salem, which is in this general vicinity, and a 4-foot streetscape buffer between the proposed fueling canopy and Salem Road. This was to help offset the 2-way travel lane. There is a proposed 17-foot through here. So that was the first variance. The second item is that the parking stalls and drive aisle widths must conform. So drive aisles for 2-way traffic are required to be 24 feet, and then for 1-way traffic, 12 feet. A 17-foot drive aisle is proposed for 2-way traffic, again, between the streetscape buffer and the fueling canopy, the stacking spaces there. A 21.5-foot drive aisle for 2-way traffic is proposed between the parking spaces and these parking spaces here and the stacking spaces for the fueling canopy here. So this is proposed at 21.5 feet, where it's required to be at 24 feet. The third variance is for backup area to permit ingress and egress maneuverability. Again, that also relates to the drive aisle widths. And the fourth variance is for the dumpster enclosure. Because they have relocated the dumpster, a variance is requested now because it's technically considered the front yard area. They are proposing, or requesting a variance. There is a retaining wall in this area and a change in elevation, so it does sit down below the grade of Bernie, but a variance would be needed for that area. The number of parking spaces that is proposed is 7, where zoning requires 11 based on the square footage of the building. The vehicle stacking requirements, this is Article 5.3H1. 2 spaces are required for each fuel pump. Only 1 is identified for each fuel pump. And then the interior parking requirement, or landscaping requirement, there is some landscaping up against the building. This does not count toward the township's interior landscaping parking requirements. There is a small bit of landscaping here, but again, it's not actually within the interior of the parking spaces. And then last but not least, wall signage. The dimensions of the wall signage I don't believe were required, so or were not permitted, were not provided. Therefore, we did put that in as a item, not knowing what the wall signage would be. All right, with that, I will turn it over to questions for me, or if you wanted to hear from the applicant.
All right, we'll start with questions for you. Mr. Lewis.
Yeah, Paul. With moving the handicap parking spaces away from the building in the prior plan, is that okay with the ADA? And
I believe it's still, and I'll defer to the applicant then for that. It's a building code requirement, and I believe it's close enough. The main entrance, if you'll recall, is right here.
right, so the parking
So
is very removed now. The handicap parking.
But still fairly close. You know, I think the distance would meet the building code requirements, but I'll let the applicant speak to that.
Okay.
I think their architect is here.
And then about the new enclosure, or the where we've moved the dumpster, you say it's below grade and there's a retaining wall. So if I'm walking down Bernie, do I see into the enclosure?
So this is, yes, there will be, so we have 2 different shots of that area. So the proposed dumpster would be back in this area. So yes, as you're walking up the street, you would be able to see into the dumpster.
Okay.
This is standing up on Bernie, kind of looking down. The proposed dumpster's out of the picture.
It'd be right.
It would be
where the tree stump is.
right,
Or tree.
right in this
log.
area here. Yes.
And what is the retaining wall? So there's no additional fencing going up above that
That's correct.
in the proposal. Okay. And then we talk about the impervious service ratio wasn't provided. Now they're asking for it because it's
Anything over 60% requires a PUD approval.
right, but we don't know what percent it is.
We don't know, but it's pretty much 99%.
Just wanted to hear it. Okay. That's all I had.
All right, thanks. Mr. DeBaggio, or Ms. DeBaggio.
That's okay. Dealing with the impervious again, I'm going to assume it's exactly the same for all intents and purposes as it is currently, correct?
There is additional landscaping that is proposed along the road. So currently there is no green or landscaping along Salem on the Clark station. And then if you'll recall, the Keegan, we can go back to the site photos. The Keegan building has pull-in parking now. So they are adding additional green to the site, trying to achieve our streetscape requirements along these 2 areas. And then the county engineer recommended landscaping or some type of barrier in this location to prevent cut-throughs through their parking lot. So to answer your question, additional green is proposed that is not there now. And I can show you the photos. So this is the area on Salem. There's a concrete median here now where 2 light poles are. The Keegan's building doesn't have any landscaping along the roadway either. There is some landscaping along around the freestanding building and that, or the sign, and that would remain.
Okay. In the notes or the minutes, it was, there was apparently have been a number of complaints since Clark closed in 2015. Are you able to disclose the nature of those complaints? Is it just a nuisance? Is there something we should be taking into consideration?
It's mainly nuisance complaints, because it's a vacant building. It's been vandalized multiple times. And the previous property owner was very quick to board up the windows, but it's a vacant piece of property. So the majority of the complaints are because it's vacant and it looks bad. The current complaints are the tanks were removed, the hole keeps filling up with water. There is a fence around it though, and then just the overall appearance of the site. So those are the nature of the complaint.
Okay, and if I'm understanding the drawing properly, there is green space, if I may call it that, that's actually behind.
So yes, there is, I'm sorry, I went the wrong way. So there is that area that you saw. The trees have been removed in that area, so there are no more trees in that particular area. But it's not paved.
Yay. Thank
The
you.
landscape plan calls for ground cover plant material in that area.
Ms. Ellis.
Yeah, yeah, not too much. Just two quick things. One, on the fifth or the last variance for wall signs, are we not really giving them a variance for that? You're just putting on notice that since they didn't put anything there, the max is 20%.
That is correct. Yeah, I misspoke. The staff report just identifies areas that are not in compliance, and we did wall signage just because we didn't have the final calculation.
I understand.
Yes.
And then that little barrier between the third parcel over there that's not part of this and the old Keegan's, why did they want a barrier there? I mean, we're always trying to encourage cross-access and stuff like that. What's the thinking there? Cut through or something? Or
Yes, and I'll let the applicant speak to that, but this is designated as a one-way to come through, and they did not
'cause
want
that's
cars
for the
cutting
pony
to go
keg.
through the one-way area.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. That's it.
Thank you. If the applicant would like to present their case, again, please state your name and address and affiliation to the case.
Well, good evening. I'm Carl Hartman, 3478 Holly Ridge, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45245. Just to maybe elaborate on Mr. Eliff, we are co-owners of a piece of property in Claremont County, Miami Township. My conversation with him was about that. We did not discuss this at all in any regard. And so therefore, that's my ethics as an engineer. I represent the applicant. The applicant owns the corner lot already. He has that. The parcel, which is the old Keegan's Seafood, he has a contract to purchase. And so that's it. So he had bought this with anticipation of remodeling, not remodeling, but tearing down the existing building, tearing down the existing canopy, and have a new, fresh look for the whole thing. They are owners and operators of multiple ones of this similar type. This is actually the fourth project that I have been associated with them, and have found them to have quality products, and their properties are well maintained. Give a little bit of a repeat of what I said last time, but a little bit of history. Prior to the end of World War II, Anderson Township was very rural. When my family moved here to Anderson Township, we had working farms. With the end of the 1940s, one of the first areas to commercially develop was Salem Pike. Salem Pike developed before Beachmont Avenue corridor. Fact is, when I was in 8th grade, we walked up the center of Beachmont Avenue for lunch and was allowed to do that. So therefore, but it's time for this area to redevelop, and that much of Beachmont corridor is redeveloped. Now is the opportunity we have to do this. Like I stated, they are very good at what they do, and they have multiple ones of these locations. A little bit answer, we have met with the county engineer's office. As a result of that, we have closed one approach. The county engineer asked for that buffer on the west property line to prevent people from cutting through. They was afraid that going west of us on Salem Pike is almost a continuous curb cut down there to the first residential house in that regard. We have, after last meeting, we have done considerable work We have, like Paul said, we have relocated the trash bin, and we will screen that. We will have the full height there. That wall is sloping. That wall can be stepped into there, and that will have that height. The property is, there's about a 20-foot height difference between this and the church parking lot. My family happens to go to that church, and I was looking at it Sunday after service, and there's about a 20-foot drop in grade. There's a lot right now. The honeysuckle and all the other things have grown there. You can't hardly see the building standing in the church parking lot down into the existing building. We have taken, you know, one of the issues that came up last time was the tracking of the vehicles to service this site. Well, Lycans Oil has been serving this site for over 10 years with the product. We have a representative, Dave, over here from Lycans Oil. He can address the ability of Lycans Oil to service this site. There was also questions about the beverage haulers and to service the site. We have Brian here. Both of them have been sworn in. They can address the issue and any questions you may have on this. And one of the things, you know, that we as designers, when we design something, you know, we always think it's going to work. The real test of it, though, is the people who have the boots in the field, the people that use it. And that's why I feel it's very critical for both Lycans Oil and the beverage, Brian and Dave over here to answer any questions you may have. They have assured us that they can. Like I said, Lycans has served this for over 10 years. The staff report on page 5, staff recommends approval of the following variances. We find those all acceptable. We have removed our request for a variance for the existing marketing sign at the corner to remain. That's no longer as part of the request. And then the staff also gives reasons for the approval. So basically, I'm trying to keep it short, and I think I have. So any questions you have, we and the team will be able to answer. We have also have Dave Todd here, legal counsel for Keaton, and so he can answer any questions too. David?
I have nothing to add. Carl, for the last 40 years, you've been knowing what you were talking about, and you still do. Actually, it's 50.
David and I have worked together for about 45 years.
Oh, my gosh.
If you could please stand up, state your name and address.
My name is.
Into the microphone,
I am-
please.
I am.
Could you come to the microphone, please, just so we can get it on tape?
My name is David Todd. I'm counsel for the applicant. I have been a resident of Anderson Township since February of 1970. I have been in the house of the prior case where Mr. Burnside, a surveyor, used to live long, long ago. I drive by that place every day as an aside. I live at 8029 Evening Whisper Way in Zone 44.
Thank you. Okay, any questions of the applicant? Mr. Eliff, we'll start with you.
No, I do not have any questions. Thank you.
Ms. DeBois.
I found the letters helpful.
I have basically two questions, and there are, would you be willing to do it? The first one, when I am looking at the exit going to Bernie, to me, it appears as though that's a right-hand turn only onto
Correct.
Bernie. Okay, are you able to put in some kind of a curb structure that will force people to turn right? Or is that not workable due to your deliveries, et cetera?
I doubt it's workable because of the traffic that will be entering it, coming in. Say people going southbound on Bernie, when they cross Salem and want to come in, it'd be difficult. And we discussed a little bit with the staff of the county engineer, and he felt as though signage would work. If somebody violates the signage, they can be ticketed for that. If they have an accident, when they're turning left, they can be cited for that accident. So there are remedies for that.
Okay. The other question, basically my last question, is the, where you now have ground cover headed towards the church, and especially down near the dumpster to protect from view for those walking by, et cetera. Would you be willing to put in some sort of mixed landscaping?
Yes, it would be in the right-of-way of Bernie Lane.
Well, not on the right-of-way itself. I'm talking over farther. Would you be willing to do something other than just ground cover there? Or what kind of ground cover are you talking about?
Well, I've had that ground cover in my home I want to get rid of because it's,
Oh, is
it's
that it?
invasive. You know, the church actually, and with Keaton, removed a lot of the trees. And why did they remove the trees? The church removed them, as I understand, talking with the head of the trustees. They wanted more visibility for the church. They felt as though the trees that were there prior blocked the visibility, and they wanted to improve the visibility. Now, as far as ground cover, I'm not sure. Yes, we can do something more, but I'm not sure what type. I'm talking about this viney stuff that comes through. Ivy is not going to work, but that other stuff, and it helps in erosion control.
Well,
It
that's
will
my
take
concern.
the water running down there. The ground cover is better for erosion control than trying to put a series of pines or some sort of deciduous or coniferous trees. So I feel that the ground cover is a best solution for not only for the looking from the parking lot into the hill, it will be green, and it will be help for the control erosion.
Okay. I lied. I have one more question. Sorry. The delivery, and this may be for these gentlemen to answer, how specifically are they planning on accessing this property? Is it all off of Bernie? Is it primarily off of Salem?
Well, I think it's best if they address this. Come on up. You're not going to.
And again, if you could state your name and address and affiliation to the case, please.
David Oatley with Likens Oil Company, 5163 Wolf Pen, Pleasant Hill. Yeah, so I believe heading in this direction is westbound, coming from Beachmont. The idea that transportation is a 24/7 operation at Likens, 365 days a year. We can manage inventory so we can come in on or off peak hours. I think it's preferred that we come in on off-peak, and if we're heading westbound on Salem, if I understand it, heading in this direction from Beachmont, we would turn left onto Bernie, right directly into the gas station to the northern part of the canopy, and set up cones, unload, then back out west again onto Salem, left back onto Salem.
Okay.
You also have you have different tankers and size equipment.
Yeah, the drawing here, I think, is showing our transportation vehicle, but we also have tank wagons that are about half the size of that could deliver there as well.
This shown on the plan is the maximum size of equipment
That's
that
right.
they would service it. And like you said, it's at an off period. It will not be at the time when you have peak for the store or peak traffic on Salem Pike.
And would the same occur there with your deliveries?
Hello, my name is Brian Minardi. I live at 3583 Applewood Drive, Amelia, Ohio, 45102. I represent Stagnair Distributing. We are probably Ken's largest distributor that will distribute to him. We will access, I obviously talked to our operations manager, we will access the same as the gas. It'll be easier for our trucks to come in off of Bernie and exit out Salem. Making that turn coming out, going the other way will be a little bit difficult for our driver. We don't want to block Bernie. So that is probably the route we'll use. We have variances trucks. We have 12 bay, 20 bay. We also have the standard bulk size truck.
What hours of operation?
We will do off-peak. We will not want to deliver when the drive-through is open.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
Yeah, thanks for addressing the delivery. That was a big concern last time, and it is improved. From an operational traffic flow, if I'm coming down Bernie and I make a left in, do I traverse by the gas? If I'm going through the drive-through, is that, and I heard that was one way. I don't have the pointer, Paul, if you can understand what I'm trying to say. You go one way and then around the building?
Correct.
So nobody can turn from Salem if they're not going to use the drive-through, they can't come through and go through there to get gas.
They could get gas after they go through the drive-through.
Right, but if I was just to get gas, I want to take the second entrance, not the first entrance, I guess.
Well, there is between the North Island and that, there is with a car being fueled at that spot, there is sufficient room north of that for the car to pass.
Right, but my point is, I don't have, how do you limit limit it to one-way traffic between the buildings and the street in Salem, right there, where he is? I understand that's one-way traffic right there?
It shows that it's wide enough for two-lane. And I got the impression from last meeting that you wish for that to be one way.
We do, I personally do, I'm just wondering, how do you restrict it?
We could put a signage.
Okay, well, that's my second question is Commissioner brought up about the turning left onto Bernie. I know in some other places like, for example, BP on 5 Mile, they have like a triangle to prevent you, a concrete triangle to prevent you from going left. They also have the signage, but they have an impediment.
We could put a low profile curbing in. That's no problem. We would be willing to add that, something that the tanker would have no problem negotiating over.
Okay.
I have no problem with that.
And then, Paul, can you put up the picture about the dumpster, or where the dumpsters? The actual, nope, there. Okay, so I'm walking down Bernie, we talked about ground cover, and we have the retaining wall. What are you putting up in addition to what's there to prevent people to look down, because you have a grade differential from people looking straight down into a dumpster?
We have no problem putting some coniferous trees along that area, but they're in the right of way. So if we can get the permission to do this, no problem. We will add those.
But if you slid
I think
everything
we
over
would
so it
enjoy
was-
that ourselves.
But if you slid things over so it wasn't in the right of way,
I believe the dumpster is pretty much on the right-of-way line.
in the current plan.
Correct. I mean, that wall, the current wall.
Right, but I'm concerned about the proximity to foot traffic and to the neighborhood, so.
Well, it could be done with landscaping, and we have no problem. We would actually think it would be a good addition to the plant.
Okay,
However, we will need to put it in the right-of-way, I feel.
okay. And Paul, if you can put the slide back up of the traffic flow within the, and this is probably a question for the applicant, or if you can answer. With only having one car stacking, you know, when two is supposed to be in the plan, what does that do economically to the viability if you don't have the, you know, if you only have one car stacking because of the space limitation?
Well, there's two cars on each side of the island spacing.
Right, but there's
So
usually
you got a total of 2, 4, 6, 8 cars can be there fueling at one time.
right, but if you get stacking, then you get congestion and you have no movement through the property.
Well, it is an existing site, and that's one of the things that it's retrofitting an existing site is not always perfect.
Right, it's an existing, was an existing gas station, not a convenience drive-through. You've modified it.
Well, it was more than gas, it was not gas station, they had a convenience.
Right, but not a drive-through.
Correct.
Okay. I have no other questions.
I have some questions. Concerning the exterior material, it appears to be brick and stone. Is it true masonry stone, or is it a synthetic like a plastic as far as the exterior finish?
Well, let Keaton talk about that.
That'd be great. If you could state your name and address, please, sir.
Keaton Patel, 1029 Ashbury Road in Anderson Township. I've been resident for 20-plus years in Anderson. Yes, masonry, brick and the stone on the bottom,
Not the fake,
not the fake.
not the lick and stick.
Yeah.
And
That's what I was afraid of. You know, they make some really good
Actually, one
plastic
thing we
stuff.
didn't mention is that we've actually, the column supporting the canopy is gonna be faced with the same
and
material.
the last meeting we are here, forget the name. she required to have the column need to be brick and that, and we did the
That was
column
Ann's
and brick.
suggestion.
That was a wraparound before, I believe.
Yes, wrap around the column, plus brick also on the bottom of the column too. And same way the dumpster area we did. And we can work with the staff, and if the need to raise or buffer it, Carl already mentioned it to you on the corner, we're willing to do that. It's not a big deal.
It'd be the same materials on the column of the canopy as used on the building, and it's not lick and stick. It's real brick and stone.
But this is
And the
one
same- Looks like the
exist-
same material would be on the dumpster enclosure.
Yes, yes. And this is existing site. We limited like all, on the Salem side right now is a 3 in and out exit. We are limiting 1 right now. And the other one, we're doing the buffer on the front of the Keegan's property. There's nothing right now. Anybody can
It's a
walk in.
continuous curb cut.
So it's a lot of buffer. It's going to be nice, make it good on neighborhood on the corner, value the neighbor's property also, because right now, as is, they can see it, they will, but we are willing to develop that area, and it's the best we can do on that. Thank you.
The curb cuts that are remaining there are better defined now. These little landscape islands will better define the curb cut, and so that we will have the flow of traffic.
And on 20-some year I'm on this business, my understanding and what I will, the customer who comes, they park the car on the pump, they pump the gas, they come inside and pay it or buy it, and they leave. The normal customer who comes, they prefer to the drive-through. That's the main reason is the drive-through. So, and the parking is what the retail space area we have it is 1,200 square feet. They require only 4 or 5 parking, and we have more than 5. The remaining area, if you, the drive-through is already like a 1,200 square foot drive-through, plus all the retail storage area and that. So that's the reason we are asking the variance on it. And the drive-through, still we have the requirement enough to 5-car stacking on that drive-through. So it's pretty good size, which
For the dumpster enclosure, would you be willing on the south and east elevation of that to actually extend the masonry material up, to 8 feet above grade at access point? That would gain you about another 4 feet, south and east. The people walking down Bernie Lane.
At back of the Keegan's building?
Yes, in lieu of landscaping that, over time, the maintenance of landscaping, all that, really create an enclosure of that.
We could probably put something up 90 degrees to the parking lot that would give a barrier from the walking down Bernie Lane. If you follow me?
which one?
We're pulling the site plan up, Paul? It's the middle, isn't it? Which one, which button? You're talking about in this area here, people seeing it walking down here?
No, I'm actually talking about the corner, that's the existing retaining wall.
Oh, okay.
In essence,
Yeah.
bringing
okay.
the grade of the existing retaining wall up with the
we're
masonry
talking-
material. There and there.
I got you.
Yeah,
In
we
lieu
put
of,
landscaping there.
We will do
not
the
landscaping,
yeah.
truly making a masonry enclosure.
Yes, we can do that.
Okay.
No problem with that.
We can work with the staff, and if you condition of that, we can easily, it's not,
We can accommodate
it's
that, no
already
problem. No
5
major revision.
5 and 6 foot high, but we can make work with the staff, and what the height require, we can do that masonry brick.
And then to sort of guide the people exiting the drive-through area, could you put a landscape, island between the ADA striped area and the actual driveway? I'll stand up and point.
Okay.
I guess what I'm thinking is if you could put a landscape island here, someone exiting will then be turned to go into the drive aisle and not directly in, and that would also increase, you know, some green space in your site.
It's doable.
It
The
is-
only
it's-
question I have is snow plowing. Snow plowing, it's gonna be a hindrance for snow plowing, but it's doable.
Right. And a snow plow and a snow removal company can address it.
Yes.
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 Um,
Hopefully you have mild winters, right?
Yes, it's not a big deal. We can able
We
to
could
do
put
that.
a similar island in there, similar to what we have out front.
And then, I see the existing business sign to be removed. Are you planning a new, you know, monument sign? And if so, where or not at all?
On the canopy.
It's on the canopy.
So just the canopy and the building
See,
sign?
where's Paul, the canopy?
I forgot the name of the
See
band.
where we're on the canopy, where it's
Yeah.
got marathon?
So really, the signage is on the canopy or the building, not a new ground-mounted sign or pole sign?
Yes, yes.
I think the staff had a condition of a ground-mounted sign if they build
If
one.
they built one, yes.
Right.
I was just seeing if they were planning on building one.
Oh,
No
okay.
ground.
No,
Okay.
okay.
All right, that's all the questions I had. Thank you. Any other questions?
Oh, yes, I had one for Mr. Patel since he came up, which is the elevations I really like, but, and I'll save that for discussion. But one thing that looks nice about the elevations, remember, we're smack in the middle of a neighborhood there, is the building is very clean right now. And it's not unusual, for example, if you go up the street to the Sunoco that's, I guess, down the street, I think maybe at Corbly or something, it's just, and that might be in the city, I'm not sure, but
No,
it's
it's
not, okay.
Anderson.
Well, anyway, it's very, I don't know, unappealing, because they have all this stuff in the windows, and I know at the last meeting we talked about the cages, and that's a fact of life, there's propane cages and stuff, but some look better, some look, but the windows, can you keep if you do this, can you keep the windows kind of clear in this a little bit, you know?
I promise.
Okay, that's just what I was wondering, because I saw that, and the little things, you know, make a difference between whether this is a nice, fun asset, or not, a nice asset for the neighborhood, or something you drive by and you're like, maybe I'll just keep going, you know,
That's
but,
the problem with what's there now.
yes.
You
That
hear
was,
Brian?
that was it, thank you.
Did
And
you hear?
I'm gonna add a question. There was a lot of discussion about deliveries during off-peak, not only for your fuel, but
Yes.
your supplies and your
Yes.
goods. What is off-peak?
Off-peak,
You know, what hours?
off-peak hour, because I can work 24 hour. And this is like a neighborhood business. It's not like we are comparing like a Kroger or Walmart or that. What the average they knows, they work on, they check the inventory when we need it. They plan day before, like when I need it. So they come in after the closing hour or something. And delivery, the beer and other people, they really like in the morning early.
Before
And
noon.
the drive-through hour, I mentioned the last meeting, there's not going to be store hour. The drive-through hour is a different. So when the drive-through not open, they trying everybody be before that so they can not control any other.
How many similar locations do you have?
We have 10 similar location in Batavia to
Greater Cincinnati? right?
Greater Cincinnati, basically, on
All the way
all
out to
the
Bethel?
township.
And if I remember right, the Sunoco station that Mr. Eliff was mentioning, is that one of your properties?
Which one?
The Sunoco station? Isn't that what
No,
you're
no.
referring to?
No, the one down, no, the one out on
We-
Beach, on Ohio Pike.
On Ohio
We-
Pike.
In Pierce Township.
Okay.
Pierce Township, we just,
You know, I guess the question of the hours is, you know, a delivery at 5:30 a.m. for your neighbors may not be as attractive as off-peak as what you think it is.
Well,
So that's the
there
thing
really
that I
aren't
asked
a
the
lot of
questions.
close neighbors.
Well, you know, there's diagonally
The
to the
corner,
city of
the opposite
Cincinnati.
corner, the northeast corner is the city of Cincinnati. And they've had this gas station here for decades that we've had in the past.
And things change over time, and, you know, right now, they're probably very comfortable with no noise, even with the
Although
dilapidated
the
building
appearance
that's
of
there.
it is
Exactly.
indicative, so which is
So,
greater?
you know, you trade off one for the other.
Yes.
So thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak in favor of the application? Okay, seeing no hands, anyone like to speak opposed to the application? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Nancy Roberto. I live at 1150 Bernie Lane. Prior to living at Bernie, I lived on Weatheridge Drive, so I was a resident there when Mr. Keegan had his seafood store there and when Bounty Seafood was there. Had lived there for a long time since the clerk station was there. I do have concerns about this property, particularly it seems like we're doing two things, putting a gas station and putting a drive-through. So there's drive-throughs right up on Beachmont, one entry point, one exit point. The one on Clough, one entry point, one exit point. So we've layered this sort of drive-through concept with the entry and exit, and this intersection is going to get so congested. There are kids walking down our street all the time. It's like the point of access for Beach Acres. The houses across the street are starting to turn, and there's more families with young kids. I see them walking down all the time. I also have concerns. What you were mentioning, we had heroin needles down at the street corner. We've had our cars broken into. I do worry about the type of clientele that'll be in this facility. The church actually they changed their driveway so you can only enter one way and exit one way. I think that's logical, so we may not be able to win the argument of whether this business goes in here, but the traffic congestion just seems like a nightmare waiting to happen. And I worry about a pedestrian getting hit, or myself. I've actually even tried to ride my bike down to get down to the bike trail to Beach Acres, and it's hard enough just to not get hit by someone coming through the intersection. So thank you for listening. If you have questions for me? Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak opposed? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Jana Marshall, and I live at 1164 Bernie Lane. If you go to the actual pictures of the plan or of the current site, you can actually see my house, which I will point out. Right there, the White House, right on the corner. So as you can imagine, it's on a hill, so I see directly into the gas station area, which now is more upsetting now knowing that there's a dumpster right there facing my house, my front yard. No trees or no leaves on the trees. It is very bright already with the auto repair shop and the church lights. My bedroom window is right there facing the gas station. So it's really upsetting that this would go through. There's just the traffic flow both internally and externally seems to be a mess. I cannot see pulling out of my driveway and pulling into my driveway already with the hill there, cars coming up onto Bernie, and I fear that it will only get worse with the congestion. The lights from the fuel station will be shining into our house, along with the refueling tankers and the restocking trucks will be off hours. So I hear it all. I'm quite used to the quietness right now. I am a taxpayer in Anderson, and I appreciate just not having more noise and more crime in the area. I was visited by the sheriff's department just last week, looking out for a man who was on the loose, and this just invites more traffic or more crime in the area. This area has changed over time. There are more young families, and I don't think that this fits into anything that we want in the neighborhood. The impervious surface is also a concern. I'm an environmental scientist. The ground cover, as he mentioned, that does not prevent erosion. I know erosion very well, and it's the #1 pollutant in our waterways. So ground cover, won't do anything. Trees are what prevents erosion. So you can, from the church parking lot, also see down into the gas station parking lot very well. So that was not truthful. I'm a frequent runner, so I run by it all the time. You can see into that area behind there. So building the wall higher isn't a solution. It will actually just further confuse traffic and the in and out people going to the gas station and so on. And I don't believe he addressed in his plans the car stacking very well. Seems like it's still going to be a mess. Not successful for the economy or anything for Anderson. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak opposed? Seeing no hands, if the applicant would like to address any of the comments that have been made?
I'm not sure of her at all, even though I put new batteries in my hearing aids this morning. Her concern about lighting, actually the township has in their zoning a very definite criteria as to lighting, as to minimum on the property lines. And this lighting plan we have submitted conforms with the township requirements.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? If not, then we'll close the public. Yes, okay.
Paul, on the reduced number of parking spaces is within compliance with the size of the retail establishment?
So the way that our zoning, the parking regulations are in the zoning, we calculate based off of building square footage, not the individual floor plan of each building. So we don't.
So the convenience store is only in the calculation?
No, we include the entire square footage of the building.
Okay.
For our parking requirements. So, like, when we look at Kroger, we look at the entire building, not what is used for warehousing, what's used for their floor displays. We incorporate the entire building.
What would be
the argument that Mr. Patel and Mr. Hartman were saying is that because it's a drive-through, they feel like they don't need as much parking, and because of the layout of their floor plan, they have very limited display area.
Sure.
Because the majority of their customers will either be parked at the gas station or gas pumps or going through the drive-through. So their argument that they should be granted a variance is because they don't feel like they need as much parking as what our zoning requires.
Okay.
So
what is
yes,
the actual number then? How much of variance are we looking for, or was it in the?
It was in this.
Okay.
Get back to the numbers. 11 is required.
Okay.
And
So
they're
we
proposing 7.
All right, and we
So
were at
2.
9, so we were talking variance before.
Correct.
Okay. And then, as far as notification, the church was in the range of residents or,
Yes.
and have they come out opposed or supportive or neither?
I don't think we've heard. No, we haven't heard from
Nothing.
the church.
Okay. No other questions?
All right. Any other questions? Okay, with that, we'll close the public hearing and discuss amongst the commission. So, Mr. Lewis, we'll start with you this time.
Thank you. We've seen improvement. It's directionally, it's going in the right, outside of the dumpster. I'm concerned about that, but maybe with enough conditions that can be mitigated. I still feel on the surface we're trying to not put a round peg in a square hole, but a rectangle peg into a square hole. We're trying to shoehorn as much as we can in here, and I understand, if they do something and people drive by and it's congested, they're not going to give it a shot the next time. I drive by Kroger, and if people are queued, I go into the next station and pay a few cents more. So, but again, it's a tight location, and I commend them for working with us to improve it. But if there is several conditions that would, so.
Thank you. Ms. DiBaggio.
I like the fact that something's being done, to be blunt about it. It has been an eyesore for way too long. Overall, the concept I'm fine with. I do have some concerns about traffic flow simply because you're at a very busy intersection to begin with. I'm not opposed to it. I would like to see some more evergreens, et cetera. I would like to see that instead of the ground cover. I'd like to see perhaps your idea of that island with a little more low at the end of the shrubs. Thank you. At the end of the handicap parking space to help direct traffic. Overall, I think the idea and the design is fine. I do have a couple of concerns about how it may function. I don't know that we can really control that. It's a very tight area. So.
Thank you. Mr. Ellis.
Thank you. And I am for this redevelopment, and it's not a perfect site, but it's a redevelopment. And I'm familiar with one of Mr. Patel's other locations where he did the same thing up on Business 28, and it works fine. He re-bricked the gas station. It's got a drive-through there. There's not as much stacking as we're used to at the gas pumps and stuff. It works totally fine. In fact, this one is much more of a neighborhood-oriented type of arrangement than that one is. So I'm not worried about that at all. And secondly, the elevation drawings are very good for this type of thing. And that's what you want for this, that's stuck in the middle of a neighborhood, is something that's going to be inviting to the people. I understand there are some disruptions to the neighbors that are nearby potentially, and we run into that all the time when the residence bumps into the commercial. But this has been a gas station, or the remnants of a gas station, for a long time. I stopped by there this morning. It looked like a bomb has gone off over there. It's terrible. So I really think it's incumbent upon us to approve this. And I think I jotted down everybody's conditions, so I would be happy to try and make a motion when you're ready for that.
And, I guess I concur that, the redevelopment needs to happen to at some point at this. And, when is the next opportunity? What is it going to be? It's probably going to be something similar to what is in front of us today. What I'd also like to add is, as a condition, is any mechanical equipment that may be on the roof be screened in any sort of motion that's, proposed, because you will see a good view of that coming down the Bernie Hill. I used to live on the other side of the Bernie Hill also, so I bought gas when there was still a gas station there for my lawnmowers quite frequently. So, that's something I'd like to add to any motion that's been made. And with that, anyone like to make a motion?
I'll try and make a motion, and the motion is to approve in case 2, 2019, to approve the application, consistent with the site plans and elevation drawings most recently submitted, dated 5/6/2019. Also, the approval motion will include the 2 conditions mentioned in the staff report, that the monument signage, if there is signage, it be monument style, and that the township design guidelines, to the extent they're necessary to supplement the drawings, would be applicable. The requested variances would also be approved, excluding the one for the sign, which has been withdrawn, and for the reasons stated in the staff report. An additional condition is that the ground cover acceptable to staff will be planted along the south hillside, along where the church abuts. And I'm not adding trees because I heard that the church, and I believe this to be true, doesn't want to be screened. They want the church building to be visible. Also, that there be low-profile curbing be added to the right in only off of Bernie to encourage appropriate use of that as a write-in only. And that where the dumpster is proposed, that the screening walls be extended with a high-quality facade material similar to what we see of the building finish, so it's screening to passers-by as they walk by the dumpster and to the nearby neighbors, and that there be a addition to the site plan that as you exit the drive-through area, that there be an additional landscape island installed west of the handicap parking spot that will channel the traffic correctly into the exit lane, and that if there is mechanical equipment added to the new structure, that it be screened. I think that's it.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I will second.
Before you take a vote, because I think there's some confusion about the access point on Bernie Lane. I think we just need to clarify. I'm not sure if that needs to be from the applicant or what, but I thought the county engineer was recommending a right out only, but still allowing left in off of Bernie. And so you're wanting to modify that to make a...
I was okay with that. I didn't want it left out.
Well, I guess, Mr. Eliff, were you?
I would like the motion to be consistent with what your understanding of it is,
With the
Paul. So
county,
if you could
I believe the
recite that.
county engineer was allowing a left in off of Bernie, because if you are heading north on Bernie, the only way to get into that would have to go through the signal, come back through on
Oh,
Salem.
okay.
And I was okay with it.
But they did want all traffic leaving the Bernie exit to go right only.
Okay.
If is that correct? Okay. So
Right,
that
so-
was what the
so it's-
county engineer reviewed, and
To the extent there can be the, okay. Does that make sense? So I think the idea was that we were asking for some type of physical barrier be added if possible, and that's what I'd like that condition to be. Okay? All right, thank you for that clarification.
With that, could you call a roll, please?
Mr. Lewis.
Aye.
Ms. DeBaggio.
Aye.
Mr. Ellis.
Aye.
Mr. Gothard.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, with that, Mr. Drury, we know we have possibly one case next month. Any others?
possibly a second case, but we
New
have to have
case?
a formal application.
Okay. With that, entertain a motion to close the meeting.
I'll move we close this meeting.
All right, all in favor?
Aye. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Austin, thank you. Sit again.
Good job, Austin.